Will you pray with me? God, as you speak to us through the trees, through the rain, through the earth, speak to us through these words. Be present in our reflections. Amen. So we are beginning an Eastertide series on creation care this morning, and we're grounding this series in the book that many of us are reading, So We and Our Children May Live. Many of us are reading this book and will be participating in the book study led by Dolores beginning today. And if you haven't had a chance to get your copy or start on the book, or this is your first time hearing about it, but you're still curious, I encourage you to join the book study after church. I think it will be a rich opportunity to dive in. In this book, co-authors Sarah Augustine and Sherry Hostetler describe in detail, in painful detail, what we are losing. We picked this book because there's such a concern in our congregation for what is happening to our planet, particularly around climate change. But Augustine and Hostetler describe, in fact, 8 planetary boundaries that in order to, quote, avoid catastrophic ecological change and potential tipping points, 9, humanity must stay within 9 planetary boundaries. So those of you who are reading this book, do you want to shout out if you remember any of these planetary boundaries, guidelines that our planet must kind of stay within in order to stay in a point of stasis? This is not a test. This is just an invitation to participation. So you haven't gotten that far. My mistake. I am previewing for you. So the 9 are, number 1 is climate change, and that's the one that we hear a lot about. Number 2 is biodiversity integrity. Biodiversity integrity, that chain of life that feeds each other and cycles back and feeds each other. Ocean acidification. Having the ocean be an ocean that allows the animals, the plankton, the algae to thrive. Depletion of the ozone layer. Atmospheric aerosol pollution. Lost my hands. Biogeochemical flows, and that is nitrogen and phosphorus getting into our earth, mostly from agricultural overflow. Freshwater overuse. You think about our water table sinking as we irrigate. Land system change. That's the conversion of land from one use to another. Primarily, let's think of tropical rainforest to farmland for McDonald's burgers. And environmental pollution. And that's the heavy metals, the radioactive materials, the microplastics that are apparently in all of us because we just consume them because they're in our environment. It is a really difficult read, that section, and it's difficult to recount that list. We come face to face with the unraveling of systems that have existed in balance for millennia. Unraveling in the short period of time in the last century. Quote from the book, more goods and services were produced and consumed from 1950 to 2000 than in all of human history before 1950. Isn't that staggering? They tell us in this book that we are already overshooting 6 of these areas, 6 of the 9. Biodiversity, climate change, biogeochemical balance, freshwater overuse, land systems change, and pollutants. It's really sobering. The book is named for our passage that we heard this morning in Deuteronomy, that we heard from Shannon. This is a quote from the book, viewed through an indigenous cosmology or way of describing the natural order of things, the exhortation that we heard in that passage to love the Lord your God and walk in obedience to God in Deuteronomy 30:20 takes on a different meaning. Acknowledging our interdependence with all creation and the care and advocacy that we owe to the next generation is what it means to walk in obedience to the commandments of the Creator. This is what it means to love the Creator, the Lord our God, to live in a symbiotic relationship with the creation that God has made, and to take our rightful place within this magnificent, complex web of life. So clearly, if we have these 9 boundaries, planetary boundaries, on this blue marble floating in space, and we are overshooting 6 of those 9 already, we are out of balance. We have been led astray. We are not in that symbiotic relationship. And the part in Deuteronomy that caught my ear as I prepared for this morning is this line: if your heart turns away and you do not hear, but are led astray to bow down to other gods and serve them, I declare to you today that you shall perish. You shall not live long in the land. We didn't get to overshooting 6 of these 9 planetary boundaries by happenstance. We got there by consuming faster and faster. Our lives move faster. We buy faster. We sell faster. We use things up faster. And I wondered what name these gods might be called in each of our lives. These gods that attract us to spend our time, our money, our effort worshiping as we live from sunup to sundown, that lead us astray from wholeness, that lead us astray from this symbiotic relationship, from this worshiping of our Creator God, who created all things good. I wonder if we are led astray by bowing down to the God of acquiring things, the God of convenience or ease, of comfort, of access, of money. And over the course of this Eastertide, I want to invite us to each ponder in our own lives as we listen from some of the guest speakers that will be joining us from the Interfaith Creation Care community, or as we read the book, or as we attend church and just ponder within ourselves, what are those gods that we might have been led astray to serve? And how is serving those gods preventing us from living within the planetary boundaries of this beautiful globe that we are fortunate to live on? Our book tells us, not our holy book, but the book that we are reading together, we live in a closed system of mutual dependence. There is nothing that I can do as a human to change this. No innovation or technology can change this fact. There is a desire to kind of do more or seek new solutions to this difficult time that we find ourselves in. But we exist together on this whole planet. We are sharing one picnic. There's not a new picnic somewhere on Mars that we can bring in to supplant it. And so I encourage us as we move through this series to ponder what in our own lives we could shift or change or ease up so that we might approach God's world, God's creation in wholeness, respecting those planetary boundaries and eating only the portion of the picnic that is ours to consume. Might seem a bit strange to have this message, this difficult message of creation care in the Easter season, right after we celebrated Christ's resurrection, the good news that that brings. Feels like a subject of death in many ways. But it's actually on purpose that we are having this series in Eastertide, because we are a resurrection people, and we remember to fear not. We know that some things must die into life, even though we don't understand how. And we remember that in these moments, these difficult moments when we confront the world in which we live, the world that we have together created, that Jesus lived and died and was resurrected. And then he showed up on a beach where his friends were huddled and afraid because they thought it was over. They were afraid of this new future that had been forced upon them. And we remember that rather than coming to rally them to power or to figure out how to seek revenge or to strategize complicated solutions to the death-dealing Roman Empire, he came to them, and in the midst of their befuddled joy, he simply said, "Do you have anything to eat? I'm kind of hungry." So while we are pulled sometimes into a feeling of despair and concern for our earth, for God's creation, we remember in those moments that we are a resurrection people, guided by Jesus, who reminds us to fear not, who reminds us when we become swirled in complicated solutions and our own fear of the future, that sometimes gathering together with friends and focusing on the practical things that we can do, feeding each other, being in community, talking of hope, are the things that carry us forward. Amen.